I'm Lior Phillips, host of This Must Be the Gig. We're a weekly podcast that documents everything about the world of live music, speaking with choreographers, costume and set designers, the people who run beloved venues and festivals, and, of course, speaking with musicians about that one gig that changed their lives. Get your peek behind the curtain at consequenceofsound.net, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith With. It's an audio interview series presented by WFPK Independent Louisville at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Wherever you're listening from, go ahead and take a moment right now to hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with these interviews as we do publish multiple episodes every single week. I'm Kyle Meredith. I've got such a special episode in store for you today. Gillian Welch is my guest, and I am so excited. We're going to talk about the just released for the first time vinyl edition of her album Soul Journey. In fact, there's the differences that this vinyl has versus the digital copies that's been out there so far. There's also a bit of a reassessment, how the lyrics and the songs sound to her these days. And of course, the story behind what I guess is maybe her biggest hit, Miss Ohio, that came from that album as well. We'll also turn back the clock to 20 years to discuss the album Hell Among The Yearlings. She lets us know how it was almost a very different record and its ties to Nirvana's Nevermind. There's an update on when we can expect more new music, possibly. And we start out with a discussion about Father John Misty, Mr. Josh Tillman, just recently covering Gillian Welch. It's Kyle Meredith with Gillian Welch.
Hey.
I actually thought we'd start with the news today. You know, woke up this morning and Josh Tillman, Father John Misty, had released a cover of Everything Is Free, a beautiful version of it. Did you know that was going to happen? Have you heard it?
No, a couple friends just hollered at me and told me that he'd done that. I haven't heard it yet, but I did just hear about it a couple minutes before talking to you. So that's very cool. Very cool.
I think you all had played together recently, hadn't you?
We have. We just did a show at the Hollywood Bowl. It was Big Thief and us and Father John Misty. It was quite a nice sold-out night. It was really nice and really a thrill to play the Hollywood Bowl. It's a beautiful, old, natural amphitheater. Just incredible. And my dad got to come to the show, so that was kind of cool too.
Oh yeah, does he get to often? Is that a rarity?
No, it's been a little while. My dad is 92 years old.
Wow, 92.
It takes a little doing to get him out of the house. We had to give him full rock star treatment. We had to send the limo, deliver him right to the stage door, have the bowl meet him with a wheelchair, whisk him to his seat. We had to do the whole deal. So it was pretty. It all came off great though.
That's really cool. Well, there's a couple records I thought we'd talk about, that are one celebrating the anniversary, the other one, and we'll start there. Soul Journey just finally got its vinyl debut. This is a long time coming, right?
Yeah, I guess 15 years if my math is right. Yeah, it's funny. We started working towards putting out all of our records as records about 10 years ago. And this is just how long it took, I guess, because we're just really fussy and just wanted them to be really right. I mean, and we wanted the mastering engineer that we've been working with most of our career involved as well. His name is Stephen Markson. So in the end, we ended up kind of designing a custom lathe system. And when people would say, man, why don't you have vinyl? I got so tired of answering that. Eventually, I just started saying, because we're building a lathe. And then they sort of understood that it wasn't because we didn't care about it. It's because we cared so much about it, So that's really what we did. Dave and I, we built a lathe, and we cut our own.
Well, I mean,
if you look in the dead wax, like right outside the paper label on a record, sometimes there'll be little scribbly scratches. There'll be initials or maybe the name of the mastering house, But if you look on that little ring outside the paper label on our records, you'll see some initials, and that's the initials of Stephen Markison, David Rawlings, Gillian Welch, and Brent Bishop. Those are our initials. We actually, we cut that groove.
Yeah, you talked about it online about this. It actually made the album sound better to you, like hearing some nuances that maybe were lost in the digital transition. How much of that is there?
Well, more than I remembered, because it had been a long time since we had last heard the tapes. I mean, thank goodness, we've made all our records on tape. And so they're hanging tough through the years. Tape is a wonderful, 100-year format. And the tape sounded great. And I always thought that Soul Journey needed a little bit of cohesing, almost like a stew where all the parts are nice, but like it needs to go back in the refrigerator and then come back out on the stove tomorrow and be reheated.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, that's what the vinyl did. The vinyl just put everything in a more sonically beautiful world and put it all in the same world. I don't know. I'm really, really happy of our entire catalog. Once we get our whole catalog out on vinyl, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Soul Journey gets the blue ribbon for most improved.
Outside of the sound, I don't know if there was a chance for any reassessment, as far as the style and how you remember those songs, because at the time you said that was to be a happier record. Is that still how you hear it, the front porch record?
It's funny. Mostly what strikes me about Soul Journey these days is that, how can I put it? Because what I want to say, I probably can't say on the radio. Well, it sounds like we didn't give a flying, It's kind of to me, it strikes me as like kind of brave at this point. Like we just didn't. It's probably our most kind of punk record in a weird way. Anyhow, that's how it strikes me now. It's real. I guess you might call it our most kind of outsider. It's got a real naive sort of brashness to it. Anyhow, that's what I hear now. We definitely weren't concerned with what people expected of us, what would sell the best, what they would play on the radio, what would have the best sort of cross-marketing with Spotify. It definitely didn't, take anything like that into consideration. And I like that about it now. I kind of look around me in today's world, and I'm just surprised, man. Musicians think so much about marketing now, because, I mean, even Instagram is just marketing. Everything is marketing, and I see the people who are, their careers are, I see some people who are making great strides. They're brilliant marketers more than it used to be the case. That's what I find charming at this point about listening to Soul Journey. I was like, wow, man, we didn't give a shit about marketing. But there was no marketing.
Yeah, but you still ended up with a bona fide classic, like not considering a single, and then you have Miss Ohio that has sort of gone on.
Miss Ohio, yeah, which is our biggest single. I know. I guess that, it makes it easy to deal with that song because it never was to be a single. It wasn't supposed to be a single, so I don't have any of that resentment that people sometimes have when they have to deal with their big single because it wasn't any of that. It just happens to be our most popular single.
Yeah. It's a great one. I mean, it's a classic for a reason, as classics go. It's there for a reason.
Well, thank you. We have Dave to thank for that. I actually didn't think that much of that chorus. I wrote it and I thought, well, isn't that funny? It's like this funny little nursery rhyme that just goes around in a circle. And I'd kind of forgotten about it. Dave and I used to have this funny little, we called it the cubby. It really was a closet that someone had built bookshelves in, and we shoved a table in there, and it was a little tiny writing room. It was a great writing room. I wrote most of Revelator in there and a lot of Hell Among The Yearlings, and I wrote Miss Ohio in there. And it was secluded, but you could, if you were outside the door, you could hear through the door. And so a couple days after, I guess I'd written the chorus to Miss Ohio, Dave said, what about that really catchy song? What about that other song? I'm like, what song? He's like, the one, I guess, I can't remember now what part he could remember, but he's like, it had a funny little rhyme. And anyhow, that's what he was talking about, was Miss Ohio. I had pretty much totally forgotten about it.
Thank goodness for that memory right there, yeah.
Thin doors.
Soul Journey also had, it was the first time that you all had released that you had included some traditional songs with Make Me a Pallet on the Floor, and I had a real good Mother and Father that you added some additional lyrics to. What was the process for you to do that? I mean, did you just have a sense of where the story could go?
I had loved Pallet since I had heard a Doc Watson recording of it. And, of course, there's like a Mississippi John Hurt recording of it. But I had heard Doc's version, and I loved it. And I guess I sung it around the house, never on stage. But it didn't suit me. It didn't ring true to me, the line that he sang in the song, which was, then maybe you're a good man he won't know, or something. Make you down a pallet on your floor, then maybe you're man he won't know. It's like, well, that doesn't work for me. So I don't know. When I went to sing it, I spat out that other cadential, closing line, and that rang true to me as soon as I said it, because that, I have certainly slept on friends' floors in my life, and I immediately thought of one time when I was stranded in San Francisco and I crashed in a friend's shotgun apartment in the Castro, and she had wood floors, and there was no place else to sleep, so I'm sleeping on the floor, and we made a little pallet. We took a couple, blankets and quadrupled them up, and I slept on the floor. So that's what I thought of. And I know plenty of people who, in their lives, sometimes you got to sleep on a friend's floor. So that's what it connected to for me, and it seemed a little more neutral for people these days. And I liked it. It kind of modernized it in my head. I could see people. All I'm saying is, people still crash on friends' floors.
I'll jump back a few years real quick to Hell Among the Yearlings, just because it's, celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. What was that like for you?
Can you believe it?
Yeah, because, you went into this one already Grammy nominated, and a lot of roots artists were getting, pushed to, put a little alternative or rock sound in their vibe, but you didn't go that direction. You stayed the course, I guess, as it were. Was the pressure
we
there?
We did. In fact, we went backwards. We stripped it down much more.
Yeah.
From Revival. Oh gosh, there's always been pressure on us to get a band, and I don't know. There's always. But what are you going to do? You can only ever do what seems right to you. Or you don't have to, but then you have to live with the consequences, And that's one of the nice things looking back at this point in our career. It's like, well, for good or ill, we never could make ourselves do what didn't seem right to us. So here we are. But yeah, we weren't quite ready to make that record. People can warn you. They can say, well, keep writing, after you make your first record, do as much writing as you can, because you're going to get out on out on the road, and then they're going to say, okay, time to make your second record, and you're not going to have any songs. And that's, that kind of happened to us, but you don't really believe it until it's you. And then actually, I don't know how many people I've told this to, but we weren't going to make that as a duo record. We actually had started rehearsing with Roy Husky Jr. The plan was to make that whole record, Dave and myself and Roy Husky on upright bass. Because we'd done some playing with him, and we just loved Roy to death. And for people who don't know, Roy was one of the great bass players of our time, and he passed away way, way too young. And so we'd rehearsed a number of times, and then Roy just got too sick, and then he passed away. So that was that. We didn't go find another bass player. We just made it as a duet.
Yeah, what a mood that record has too. Just a, I mean, even a rushed, or an unready record. I mean, it's still a hell of a statement. No pun intended there on the title there.
We made that in a studio out in L.A. We made it at the same studio that Nirvana made Nevermind. There's some weird dark vibes in that place.
Can imagine.
That is a kind of weird, scroungy old studio. I mean, I hear they've really spruced it up now, so maybe it's not got that inherent grunge, but it definitely had some darkness and some grunge when we were there.
Is there an update on the next one? We really enjoyed the Nashville Obsolete record, with you and Dave. What was that, 2015? And, of course, under the Gillian Welch name, Herald the Harvest 2011. Is there something else in line?
And Poor David's Almanac. Well, Poor David's Almanac is our latest one, not counting any of these reissues. Mm-hmm. I don't know how old that is now. Maybe a year and a half.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a year. Time flies. But we're just going to keep working our way through the catalog, getting our records onto vinyl. And I've just been writing a ton. If I sound kind of spaced out, it's because I've been writing all day, and I get into a really weird headspace when I do. But yeah, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. We're out there touring and got shows through the rest of the year. I don't know. We're really enjoying playing as a duet right now. It's funny when we step away from it for a little while. We've been out on the road with this string band touring with Poor David's Almanac, which I love doing that too. But then one of the great things about kind of having two different bands now is we have a little bit of extra juice for whichever one we've been away from, when we come back to it. We've been loving playing just as the two guitars and two voices again.
No, we love hearing you all. I mean, Cumberland Gap ended up being one of our biggest songs of the year. Just people couldn't hear that one enough, so we're always...
Oh, great, man.
Yeah.
I love how that came out. I really have to credit Ken Scott with, pushing us to do a little more in the studio than we normally would do. Normally we just go in and sing it, and that's that. And he just put a little more shine on it, and I'm really happy to hear that people were playing it.
Gillian, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today. Soul Journey, that vinyl, and Hell Among the Yearlings, one of my favorites in there too. It's been a real pleasure, and hopefully we'll see you around Louisville again at some point.
Okay, sounds great. Good talking to you.
All right, thank you. Take care. Bye. My eternal thanks to Gillian Welch right there. Such an honor to be talking with one of the greatest of all time. That new vinyl edition of Soul Journey is out now. Definitely worth picking up. Hey, don't forget you can subscribe. You should subscribe wherever you're listening from today. Just go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now so you can keep up with these interviews as we do post multiple episodes every single week. If you're checking out the podcast version, maybe at iTunes or Podchaser, we would love it if you would give the series a rating and then leave a review as well. If you feel so inspired, you can head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show every Monday through Thursday from noon to 3 Eastern. You'll also find some bonus episodes of the series over there. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.